I'm a man-child by heart. And go figure, I'm in love with children's programs as an adult. But not just any ordinary children's programs. The live action puppeteering bliss of Jim Henson's extravagant Muppet IPs. Yeah, I said it. I cannot stand those individual frames of cells or computer generated piles of shit, otherwise known as animation. Yuck. More specifically, as a young child growing up on the Disney Channel in the mid 2000s, one of the earliest of my beloved live action Muppet franchises I was exposed to was aptly named Bear in the Big Blue House. Poofed. Bear in the Big Blue House. Oh, straight up slop. Gee dang, it feels like children's television keeps getting worse. Terribly overly exaggerated nonsense, and the stories just keep getting stupider. Golly. Anyway, every sniffin of the introduction that compared me to arbitrarily fresh scents always blocked out the reality of my house smelling like cat piss and daddy's cigarettes, which permeated throughout my childhood bedroom and daily wardrobe. I always considered it an escape of sorts after being bullied rigorously for it at school by the good smelling kids and having the elementary school counselor pull me into her office to privately ask if I needed any external assistance for my deep rooted hygienic issues stemming from my dysfunctional household environment. I'd watch Bear in the Big Blue House intros just to cope with that fact every evening. And just as luck would have it out for me, I recently encountered a hidden copy of a secretly planned Bear in the Big Blue House reboot the rest of the world has no clue about. Until now. Instinctively, after encountering such a gem I legally cannot elaborate on, I hurried toward my DVD player and popped it in, expecting the same comedic educational bliss that the fully grown man in that anthropomorphic puppeteering bear suit provided me and millions of children alike, including finding our own unique senses of smell and teaching us how not to shit and piss on ourselves. It's a real job skill. Yet, such valuable lessons couldn't have been farther from what I had watched this faithful afternoon. The episode opened up hot to the outside of a very real looking urban 2-story blue house located in some upper middle class neighborhood, a far cry from the traditional set. A logo for Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America appeared over what I assumed to be the bear in the Big Blue House logo. Now it all made sense. A mentoring bear, easily mailable, childlike characters. BITBBH was really the BBBSA the entire time. Bear was the big. Meanwhile, others were the littles. If you don't know what that means, I'm not telling you. It faded into the episode, clearly recorded in defying 8K quality, well, more akin to the camera quality you'd find while tuning into the local 5 o'clock news debuting their weekly report of inflating gas prices as strung out crackheads stood outside the local gas station, stoop begging for liquor and cigarettes, change the passersby, almost in camera view. Well, that might just be exclusive to the neck of the woods I grew up in. Anyway, the episode was entitled The Otto Cost. Otto is an OTTO, like the bus driver for The Simpsons. I thought this title was a bit spiteful, say the least, but I continued anyway. It skipped over the typical intro and opened up hot, with Bear opening the front door for the first time since the dawn of the War on Terror. Every polyester hair follicle present on the signature full-body suit welcoming in the viewer. I almost shed a tear at such high production value. His artificially glistened nose soon approached the camera as Bear began sniffing to try and discern my scent for the first time in decades. And oh boy, was I excited!
I wasn't expecting to see you back here after so long, my little. Long time no. Oh, Oh, wow. That's a rather queer smell.
Queer? After 20 seconds of this sniffing situation, Bear still couldn't pin down what my aroma was. I felt personally offended as it never took that long for the big old bear to um, uh, get a child viewer sent to be noticed. Bear was also clearly under heavy distress at himself as he began sniffing harder and harder before both of his nostrils began bleeding due to overuse.
I lost my sense of smell.
Bear exclaimed. I didn't want to believe it, but it was true. Bear didn't have a sense of smell anymore. Neither do I. Nor do you. You see, the world isn't that same adventurous plane of freedom you had envisioned as a young child, lasting forever and ever. The months and years you spent chasing those highs and accidental lows of sniffing gasoline and freshly cut grass you thought wouldn't catch up to you someday. Oh, well, they did, big time. You know what they say about the times. You either follow the route or hollow out. Bear appeared pissed off now, but mostly at himself. His nose continued bleeding at a rather rapid pace, as if he had just lost his nasal virginity and directed us to the living room area where everybody, and I mean literally everybody in that big blue house were lined up at, backs on the wall. Out of nowhere, Bear began reaching toward a loose pouch near his ass, or maybe it was just his asshole. Pulled out what appeared to be a stack of PDFs. He began passing out a copy to everybody in the big blue house, including the viewer. What followed was a grueling 2-minute segment of Noel McNeil lecturing through rather horrific and peculiar instructions on how to delouse otters and punch people in the nose as hard as possible to cause bleeding and lose their sense of smell. He throated all of this out in a rather out-of-character, stern disciplinary tone of voice, as if I had just broken the back window whilst throwing a football at the house in hopes of it ricocheting a pass back because Dad was never there for me. I really didn't want to continue viewing the secular PDFs this beast marked as the gospel that could potentially place me on a government watch list, but I really had no other choice as a fanatic on the spectrum with low critical thinking skills. The scene faded out and into a new sight that personally shook me to my very core. Tutter could be seen next to a large German stoveware oven with a twin otter's pip and pop vertically cut in half like authentic Peruvian baked potatoes on a pan. I mean, I knew those otter characters clearly had some sort of mental deficiency, clear signs of high functioning autism, and suffering the lifelong after effects of premature birth, and was as a considerable burden to all the characters 100% of the time, but that doesn't justify exterminating them. Come on. Bear proceeded to grab a vial of delousing agent and spread the contents evenly across the two otter caucus using his giant fake bear claws, lacking disposable fingers and little precision on the exposed Muppet intestines. This proved hazardous as the bear suit itself clearly began to deteriorate in direct exposure. Despite this, Noel proceeded to bend his neck downward and lick both of the fresh otter carcasses to make sure the delousing agent was evenly distributed and for a quick taste test.
I lost my sense of taste. I lost my fucking sense of taste.
The inside of Bear's mouth and surrounding areas slowly began to vaporize as thin translucent grafts of synthetic fabric revealed Noel McNeil's flared-up rash, red lips, and bleeding nose, slightly quivering in sheer distress. Noel now appeared pissed off, but mostly at himself. Out of nowhere, Olho came on screen holding a bucket of thermite paste for whatever Bear previously described as Plan B if things went south and approached Bear. Was she getting an abortion? Say, Bear, does any of my rigorous contributions mean women can be just as strong as men? Oh-ho asked excitedly.
Absolutely not. And for the record, oh ho, there's one thing the Lord loves, and that's the truth. And baby, you one ugly motherfucker.
Bear proceeded to punch Oho in the fucking face as hard as possible, causing her nose to bleed and losing her sense of smell. She dropped the bucket and proceeded to run away from the kitchen in tears as Tutter gawked out a laugh. Bear appeared pissed off, but mostly at himself. A time lapse began of Tutter single-handedly preparing Pip and Pop for dinner, making small, appropriate incisions, and setting the German stoveware oven 200 degrees too high for the job. Out of nowhere, or by fate would have it if you were to leave young children unattended near a live oven, something went horribly wrong in the baking process as thick charcoal-like smoke arose from the oven as Tutter began screaming. Bear rushed into the kitchen toward the German stone heirloom before quickly digging out the pan from the inside of the oven with his bare paws, revealing Tutter's scorched body, along with Pip and Pop's disfigured carcasses. The smoke slowly began to clear up as Bear opened up a nearby window to air out the room. Bear then picked up Tutter's half-deloused, mostly vaporized body, which was still alive for some reason, and violently punched him in the nose, causing it to bleed badly and losing his sense of smell. Tutter was now physically lifeless. Bear picked up the rest of the bodies and threw them in the garbage before, for the first time in this episode, began smiling. He proceeded to walk into the living room and remove each of his now destroyed costume layers, revealing a heavily bruised and battered Noel McNeil brandishing a sports t-shirt, pride pin, and a bloody nose covered in the ashes of Muppets and charcoal residue. Clips were now being played of Bear taking lines of credit out the big blue house beforehand and putting very unreasonable loans onto an irrationally high interest rate, leading the Bear ultimately losing the big blue house. The DVD continued running for days as Noel's phone began ringing, presumably from his wife or kids after living on the set and not coming home. He never picked up. And Noel's smile continued to get wider. And wider. And fucking wider.
I'm 45 fucking years old!
Noel screamed. He was obviously lying, as he was a bit older than that at the time of this episode's recording, until something rather shocking, and in part what he inevitably had to do, as police sirens could now be heard approaching the big blue house happened. Noel grabbed a bucket full of the thermite paste Oho scraped up days ago and began to smother himself in it head to toe, glistening a deep maroon red, as he continued laughing louder and louder toward the camera, dusting off his pride pin. Oho, who was still there for some reason, could be spotted in the background hiding, but she was obvious.
Holy shit, you're turning yourself into a controlled explosive!
Oho hollered. Noel didn't seem to notice or care as he pulled out a cigarette from his pocket and began lighting it from the German stovetop. He took a quick puff of the cig before a piece of molten tobacco flew onto his shirt, igniting the thermite paste and causing his entire body to catch fire and begin crackling like a patriotic 4th of July evening before he exploded. Noel McNeil was dead. The episode finally ended. I ejected the CD and naturally flung it out the window in the midst of no impulse controls before pacing around my room in stimulation to blow off steam, before noticing something in the peripheral of my eye outside the window. It was a big fucking bear jumping over my chain link fence. I thought it was Noel McNeil coming for revenge for watching the damn tape as I ran back for cover in instinctual fear before realizing it wasn't a bear at all. It was my next door neighbor's dog. I began hearing the familiar voice of my wife as she called him over to our lawn. He jumped over the fence and began having sex with my wife right before my eyes. I couldn't do anything but stare. After he was done, he then took his shit on top of my Bear in the Big Blue House DVD.